Victoria Stokwosa. Hjaltipad will give an introduction to the call, a short one this time. And if there are any follow-up questions after today, then the Geothermica office will be available, and Alicia, Victoria will be on the other side of your emails, basically. So that's it. Next slide, please. So for today's agenda, after this short welcome, a short quarter of an hour max, I would say, introduction to the joint call, the most important elements here. And after that, most of the time is dedicated to the Q&A session, questions and answers session. We will try to round off the plenary part at 4 o'clock, Central European time, that is. However, if you want, you can continue, let's say, on the matchmaking platform, and you can have one-on-one discussions there. And actually, that matchmaking platform will stay open all the way until the pre-proposal deadline, 4th of October. So you can do it right after the meeting. There is 1 hour reserved for that, but in effect, you can do it also later if you want. So yeah, without further ado, I would like to give the floor, next slide please, to our coordinator on the Geothermica side, Harpa, and the co-lead of the SES network, Frederick. Maybe Harpa, if you kick it off for a few words of welcome, and then give the floor to Frederick.
Thank you, Paul. Yes, it's a pleasure to welcome you all here today on behalf of Geothermica. Now, we have been preparing this joint call for some time now in a fantastic, I want to say, cooperation with the Smart Energy Systems. We are very excited to receive all your interesting proposals that hopefully are going to move us towards our goal. Of course, this opportunity, this meeting here today is in order to answer all your questions, maybe especially for those who weren't able to participate last time. And I urge you to ask. There are no bad questions, but I'm sure that it's going to be a fruitful dialogue today, and I wish you a good meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Harpa, and hi, everyone. My name is Fredrik Lundström. I'm also very happy and pleased to welcome you all to this webinar and information session. I can only just agree, there are no stupid questions, so please take this opportunity. This is what it's for. I think that we are all, just like you, we're doing a work of coordination and collaboration to make it possible to try to fund the transnational collaboration that you will set together. And we know there are some challenging pieces in the implementation of such a consortium. We know it ourselves also that there are always things that you have to find solutions to, and that we do. And we are looking forward to see your applications. Today, you will hear both about the topics that you should apply on, and we all know heating and cooling is an extremely interesting and an important area. It is also, and I guess the theme of my welcoming is coordination, because there is also the thing that is happening in the energy system, and that is that heating and cooling as an aspect, as a service, as a system, in many ways is integrating with a lot of other parts of the energy sector to a much larger extent than we had before. And this is also, of course, something that you could take into account in your work. So welcome everyone, and looking forward to another meeting. And yeah, go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, thank you very much, Frederick, and thank you, Harpa. And next slide, please. So to kick off, let's say, the presentation on the call, you've all seen the motto of our call, accelerating the heating and cooling transition. We think that this is a very, very urgent issue, and we really would hope for all of you to join in here to help bringing this forward. Next slide, please. Can switch to the next slide. then we can see that this joint call has been organized by 17 funding agencies, so programs from 15 different countries, from both the GEOTHERMICA as well as the Smart Energy Systems Network. You can see we have countries, from all over Europe, but also the USA is part of our consortium. So Austria, blue part of Belgium, Denmark, Germany, Hungary, Iceland, Ireland, Israel, the Netherlands, Norway, Scotland, Sweden, Switzerland, Turkey, and the USA. Now, if you happen to be not from one of these countries, you can still join in. However, it will be hard for us to fund you. So you would need to find your own funding or bring your own money. But it's still possible to join as a cooperation partner. In total, there is more than 30 million available. What is important is that basically the funding agencies will be funding their national partners. So it will be a joint effort. Next slide, please. And what is also important to realize, let's say, is that, of course, this will be a competitive call. So we will have a two-stage approach. And the first stage, the call for pre-proposal deadline is on 4th of October. Now coming to the topic of the call, and maybe the importance of heating and cooling in the energy system. And this is a picture from Europe. And in orange on the left, you can see the amount of heating, let's say, in the final energy consumption. And you can see that in most of the countries, this is almost half or even more than half of the final energy consumption. So it's an important element, although many discussions are still focusing on electricity or mobility only, but in fact, the heating and cooling chunk is definitely the bigger one. So we like to have more focus here. And then another element that you can see on the right is that there, in orange again, in black you see the electricity consumption, and in blue you see the mobility related energy consumption. And in orange you see the heating related energy consumption. And again, you can see a huge seasonal variation that is much bigger than for the other energy vectors. And that means that is also one of the big issues. So therefore, probably thermal storage and seasonal storage will be one of the crucial solutions. But on the other hand, there is also another opportunity, and that is that heating and cooling will provide flexibility for the electricity system. We are having more and more fluctuating renewables like wind and solar on board of the system. But that sometimes you have too much sun or too much wind, at other times not enough. And also here, the heat and heat storage can be a solution. And then last but not least, there is also I would say, local or regional element to it. Most of the heating and cooling solutions are local regional solutions, which again can be very advantageous for the energy security, and basically is also stimulating your regional economy. Next slide, please. So coming to the call, what are we looking for? We are looking for innovative projects, relatively higher TRL projects that show innovative solutions or new concepts for one or more of the following challenges. And basically there are three, and there's a lot of letters here, but in fact you could either focus on let's say the source, the resource, so for heating or cooling. So think of, for instance, geothermal heating, but also solar thermal or other sources of renewable heating and cooling, including the utilization of excess heat. That would be one. The other focus area would be more along the line, basically. This could focus on the distribution of heat and cold, but also the storage and the utilization of heating and cooling. So think of seasonal thermal storage, think of heating and cooling networks, innovative heating and cooling networks, think of innovative heat pump solutions, but possibly also solutions in the building level or in industries, because that also could be one of the focuses. And then last but not least, the integration of heating and cooling in the local and regional energy systems. So how would heating and cooling interact here with other energy vectors, like, for instance, electricity? You can think of power to heat and things like that. How could heating and cooling provide more flexibility for instance, the fluctuating electricity demand? Next slide, please. And we try to somehow make this visual, and we used this matrix to try to show this. And here you can see in the colorful vertical bars the different possible elements. So in red on the left would be subsurface heat and cold sources. So that would be typically geothermal sources. That could be one of the let's say, of the focus areas where a project could focus on. But also it could be above ground heat and cold sources like solar thermal. It could be focusing on thermal storage, but also on the networks and the conversion, and also on the end use systems, but also on combinations of these, of course. And it's not that a project needs to be fully integrated. It could be either or. So a project focusing on, let's say, geothermal energy innovations or technology innovations would also be fine, as well as a more integrated project that is, for instance, looking at the smart integration and smart control of integrated systems. So you have the choice, and the criteria at the end of the day that will be used to weigh it will be similar. So it's not that if you choose a technology-oriented topic or project that you stand less chance than if you go to a fully integrated one, or vice versa. So that's important. And then next to the technological, let's say, elements, it's important to realize that also non-technological elements are important to make the transition going. And so also for that, you should look into your project whether you can account for these. Having said that, there are differences from country to country, from funding agency to funding agency, what can be funded. So please have a look into that, specifically the Annex 1, as we call it, to clarify that better. And yeah, next slide. I would like to give the floor now to my colleague Hjaltipat Ingolfsson, the GEOTHERMICA office, to explain more details about the context and about these national requirements. Hjalti, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Paul. I'm requesting control on my screen, but somehow the system doesn't allow me. So I will just ask you to flip the slides. Yeah. So yes, thank you very much for a good start of the introduction. I would like to focus a little bit on the call text itself, and it's basically split it up into few sections. We start with the introduction in the call text and scope and objective of the call itself, what to expect from the projects. Then we will go into the rules for the participation. What rules do you as an proposer have to follow? Next part is explaining the submission and evaluation system and the criteria, and then some other information. And last but not least are these annexes, and Annex 1 is probably the most important annex of them all, because this is where you basically get information on the specific funding agency's rule. So that this is something that you need to look at, of course, very well to make sure that you are eligible with your proposal in a certain country. So next slide, please. The timeline is started with an opening of the system on the 15th of June. So the system is now open, the application system, and the pre-proposal deadline is 4th of October. So you should have ample time to prepare your pre-proposal, put your consortium together and so on. But of course, summer vacations and so on will bite a little bit out of that, we know. But we hope that you will be able to put in interesting proposal by that time. Then on the 30th of November, we have gone through eligibility check of all the proposals and are able to then invite other the eligible proposal to send in full proposal. So the opening of the ESS system, the electronic submission system, will open on the 30th of November. And a deadline for a full proposal is then 31st of January. Then we take these full proposals, make another eligibility check, make sure that everything is fit, and we are hoping to have a funding decision feedbacks in June next year, from a year from now or so, and then funded a project could start in 2022 and in September 2022. It's a bit of a lengthy process, but it's necessary because there are quite a lot of aspects to look into, and experience has shown that this time is really needed to make sure that we get everything sorted. Next slide, please. So, going a bit through the rules of participation, we expect, or the project are expected to have a graphical spectrum, or we encourage at least project to have that wide graphical spectrum, a minimum of 3 applicants though, from 2 participating countries. And funding agencies can only fund partner from its own country. This is something that we need to bear in mind as well. So we, of course, encourage project to not go for the bare minimum, to have the right amount of partners. We don't want to have it too big, though, on the other hand, but still have some room for partners to if we have run into eligibility problem that will not kill the proposal if one partner is not eligible somehow, and have a little bit of spare there. There are 3 types of applicants. We have the main applicant, which is then the applicant that takes charge of the writing proposal and is then the coordinator of this transnational project. Then we have co-applicants, which are those that are requiring funding and taking part in the project. And then we have cooperational partners, which are partners that are not asking for funding. They might be either coming from countries that are outside the network around this call, or they are simply partners that do not ask for funding within the project, and they are called cooperational partners. The maximum duration of a project is 3 years, and we expect that no project should run beyond the 31st of December 2025. So, of course, project can be shorter. Project can start a bit later or end a little bit earlier than December 2025, but this is basically the limit. It should be a maximum of 3 years and should not run beyond the 31st of December 2025. Proposals should be prepared in English. So the English is the language for these joint proposals. However, corresponding submission to national or regional funding agencies may have to be submitted in the country's official language. Basically, what I'm meaning is that in some countries there might be a parallel submission or call that partners would need to apply to to be eligible for this call's funding. And in some cases, those applications might be required to submit in the country's official language. So check that with your funding agencies and national contact points of your represented countries. Both transnational, that is Geothermica and SES, and funding agencies' eligibility criteria must be met positively to be able to be funded. So next slide, please. So the submission system, we are using electronic submission system. It's developed or organized here in Iceland by RANIS, the Icelandic funding agency. All proposals, both from the first stage and the second stage, needs to be submitted electronically through the system. It has two layers. Basically, you have the templates that are provided in Annex 2 to 4 of the call text that you need to prepare and attach to the submission system. But there is also some information you are required to fill in the submission system in addition to give a basic overview of the project and statistics and so on. These submission systems or link to the submission system is accessible through the web pages both of Geothermica and Smart Energy System networks, and is shared more or less everywhere and also in the call text itself. As I said earlier, you might need to supply or submit nationally as well, parallel to this transnational call. So be aware of that. And then all applicants will need to send in a letter of commitment. First, in the pre-proposal stage, it's a letter of intent, and then that is followed up with a letter of commitment for the full proposal. Next slide, please. The evaluation is then pretty standard. We have these two stages. In the first stage, we check for, or funding agencies check for national eligibility, making sure that they the project fulfill all the required criteria for eligibility nationally. Therefore, pre-proposals could be rejected. But it could be rejected, completely if it's totally out of scope. But it also could be alternate between stage 1 and stage 2 if there are certain criteria that can be changed a bit for it to be eligible. So there we have basically three. We use traffic light basically way to determine the eligibility. The green projects are fully eligible, no questions asked. Yellow project or project that get yellow category are projects that could be fixed if the proposal meets certain or alternate the project a little bit, the consortium itself or the content or things like that. And then we have red projects that are somehow not fitting the scope or not eligible. Then we go for the full proposal. Then we do again a recheck for national eligibility because project may change during the two stages a bit, so that we need to check it again. And then the projects or proposals are sent for independent international panel of experts for evaluation and ranking. So those that are meeting the second national criteria, eligibility criteria. Evaluation criteria are pretty basic. We have excellence, which weighing 30%, impact weighing 40%, and the quality and efficiency are weighing 30%. So we get scores, or project proposals get scores of 0 to 5, where HAL points are used. The minimum score is 3. And the overall in each category, and the overall score will need to be 10 to meet the threshold of a project. Next slide, please. Then we have this Annex 1. I did it on purpose to have it not readable, these tables, but this is all in the call text for each and every funding agency. And it's very important to check those to make sure that this is your proposal is fitting the criteria. You have, for each country or each funding agency, you have these two things to look at. It's one is the table, which specifies in writing a bit on certain criteria what is needed, and then gives you a chance to look for further information somewhere else, websites to the funding program and so on. And then we have this matrix, which Paul already explained a bit before, where funding agencies fit or basically define where they can fund a project. So they put X where they can have a sort of it could be a primary objective of the call, and then 0 where it's or an O where it can be a secondary objective, and then if there's nothing marked, it can only be a limited part of the project are taking on this specific topic. So this is different between funding agencies, so please check that. Check Annex 1 and make sure to contact your national contact point prior to submission. I think in general, this is very important, and especially if you're in doubt, and in general, just to make sure that everything fits perfectly. You can find these contact information in table 4 in the call text, both telephone numbers and emails and so on. So next slide, please. Communication. Alicia, can I give you the floor here to explain a bit on communication?
Yes, thank you. The general information will be published on websites of Smart Energy Systems and Geothermica, and on both websites you can see now the highlights of the joint call, all the additional documents which are necessary to submit for the electronic submission system, and any national regional call meetings information, if they're available and haven't been yet distributed, they will be there. By press releases, we are as well sharing the news via the matchmaking platform, B2Match, the participants there, and as well the separate mailing list. So we aim that everyone receives all the information. In addition to that, our national and regional funding agencies as well sharing all the information with their networks. We encourage you, there are some information on for the website for social media where you can find information, and if any newsletters will be released, those participants of mailing list will receive those. Yeah, I'm done.
Thank you, very good. So just in short, all the relevant information on the call should be in the call text document itself. We have this two-stage call. You have a pre-proposal and a full proposal. Minimum 3 applicants from 2 countries. This is the bare minimum, but please be aware that it might be wise to have a little bit more than a bare minimum to have a possibility, if one of the partners are eligible, that your project is not doomed red. Applicants should be in English, and you might need to apply in parallel in your native language in certain countries. You use the electronic submission system to submit both pre-proposals and full proposals, and you get that through the communications, websites, and so on. And you need to fulfill both the transnational funding agency eligibility criteria as well as the national funding eligibility criteria to be eligible for the project. And please remember to contact your national representative or your national contact point prior to submission. The submission is 4th of October, and full proposal deadline is then 31st of January next year. So we are looking forward to your exciting proposals and show us something that we didn't even think about ourselves. So we're looking forward to it. I think that's my last slide, isn't it, Alicia? Next slide. Yes, just the content point. This is then if for technical information or general information, contact Alicia through the info at Geothermica. And then if you have some issues with the submission system itself, I think it's best that you contact directly Rannís, which is helping that submission system. And that is Svandís_Sigurðardóttir at Rannís, and her email is down there. And yeah, that's it. I think we are now for open discussion, Q&A, and give it back to Paul.
Yes, thank you very much, Hjalti, and thank you very much, Alicia, for this clear explanation. We took a bit more time than we had planned, but I think as we have quite some new people also in the audience, it was useful to have that clear explanation. Yeah, let's come to the Q&A, and I'm looking at my colleague Hjalti now as well. Did we already have some questions coming in through the chat?
Well, actually, there was one question, and I think Erwin, who put that question, he has now left the meeting. So it was good that we had that exchange with him. He asked about the need to include the applied research institutes into projects, and also about the subsidy percentages for projects connected to whether you're a researcher or a company. So that's, and here's yet another question, will the slides be available? So that's two questions now.
Okay, so I would really encourage you, if you have any questions, then please use the chat and you know, use the time to fill it in while I'll try to answer the first two questions. The second one is a very easy one, I think. Yes, the slides will be made available. They will be placed, I think, Alicia, on the website, but maybe you can comment to that, Alicia, how we will spread this information.
The slides will be available on the website together with as well the recording of the meeting.
Okay, so you will have both the slides as well as the recording, so that is easy, I think. And then the other question,
Paul, maybe we should first go to another question. Elaborate on the evaluation criteria, because I answered already a bit on that other question, and here is another interesting question. Elaborate the evaluation criteria, especially impact and quality and efficiency.
Yeah, maybe we can take both, because I think they're both relevant for many people. I would say the first question, taking that on first, whether you need to include a applied research or a research institute, that depends, I would say, very much from country to country. So there might be different rules. So it's really important to check this Annex 1. You know, in the case of Netherlands, for instance, we are asking for higher TRL projects, and we are asking for at least one company. Or a corporation of a company and another company, or a company and a research institute. But this might differ from country to country. So please check the Annex 1, what applies to your country. In terms of percentages of funding, this again depends probably also on the country you're in, but in general, for the countries that are part of the European Union, they are, you know, we have to stick to a framework of state aid rules. So in many of the cases, these percentages are the same and are defined by European Union rules on maximum percentages. But again, please check the Annex 1 and the national rules on that. Then the question about the evaluation criteria. I think, in fact, it is, you know, the general criteria are, like Hjalti presented, they are three. So it's excellence, impact, and quality. These are similar to the ones that are used in horizon calls for the ones that are familiar with that. What is important indeed is that impact is weighted highest. So that has to do also with the fact that we are aiming at projects that can make a difference in the foreseeable future, that really can propel this heating and cooling transition. So therefore the impact is very important. So it's not, let's say you could have a scientifically excellent project, of course, of high quality, but if the impact will not be there in the short run or medium run, then that might be an issue. Again, depending, of course, on let's say the national criteria, but for the general evaluation, definitely impact will be an important one. So, what can be the impact of the innovation that you are working on or that you will be demonstrating or testing? In fact, to the process, we will have an independent evaluation committee. Independent experts will look into your project if they reach the full proposal stage. What will happen is basically that these criteria, will be used to rank them, to score the proposals, but it is not related, let's say, to the width of your topic. So we could both have proposals that are either focusing on a specific technology innovation that is relevant and that would have impact. And if that scores high on impact, on excellence, on quality, then you would score high. But also if you have a more integral project that is looking at, let's say, smart control of integration of heating and cooling systems in the total, if that is scores high on impact and on quality and on excellence, then of course you would also score high. So I hope this answers it a little bit. And for the national, let's say, more eligibility criteria, I would indeed again refer to the national contact points. So please check the Annex 1 first, but if you have questions left, don't hesitate to get in contact with your national contact points. Hedy, do we have other questions coming in?
Yes, sure. We have a question on, is there an optimum number of partners? That's one. Then we have another question concerning the national proposal, whether this needs to be an exact translation of the general proposal or focused on the national work. And then there is another question on the TRL requirements that differ per country. How can a project deal with that? Does the whole project need to find common ground, or can each applicant cover only the relevant TRL work for them?
Yeah. Well, maybe starting with the last one, I think it's a very interesting question, and we had it in previous calls as well. So yes, it is a fact that there might be differences in what, from country to country, what can be funded. So some countries can only do really high TRL, some others can go to a broader scope. Typically, it's medium to high TRL, but we have some room there. So because of the impact we're requiring, we would expect higher TRL elements to be there, but that's not excluding work packages, for instance, that focus on lower TRL elements. And when you build a consortium, it could well be that, let's say, if in a specific country there's the possibility to fund more the mid TRL range, then you could perfectly well concentrate on that if you're a partner from that country. But then the total, let's say, project should make sense. So if that is complementary to each other, we think, you could build really exciting and good projects out of that, and just combining this in the right way. So I think, again, important to check what the national criteria are. For the general criteria, impact is the most important one. So again, there we would expect things to be, relatively high TRL, but that's not excluding any mid-TRL work or even lower TRL work, if that is within, let's say, the funding possibilities of that specific partner country. Yeah, the other two, I think, on the optimum number of partners, I think that is hard for us to say. You know, that would be up to you, I think, depending very much on the type of project. Just a few reflections, and Frederick, you can please add if you have other thoughts here. But I would say it depends very much. If you have a project, you know, where if you are a company and you are specifically working on a technology, you know, it might be more dedicated, but it depends very much. The bare minimum we have asked for is 2. So 2 countries, 3 partners. It can be more, it may be more, but you know, it's not that it doesn't have to be more. So I could imagine that it might have more impact if you have more, but on the other hand, it's not necessarily so that the quality will go up. So a dedicated proposal might even score better than one that is really wide. At the same time, if you have a very good proposal with a larger consortium, that can also score very well. So maybe for inspiration, you could have a look at the Geothermica website or at the SES website, that you can see what has been funded in the past. But there could be differences. So hard to say, you know, I don't think there is an optimum number. You just need a good, excellent, impactful, high quality project. This is what we're looking for. Frederick, maybe you can add some thoughts.
Yeah, no, I agree with what you said. I was thinking also connecting this to some of the other questions, because I think sometimes with this ARANET type call, that this is, I know we mentioned that before as a comparison or as just a similarity, you know, a potluck party where you can bring food to a table and everyone brings something and you create a good dinner. I think what you have, or lunch, whatever it is, what you have to think about here is the resources for the project that you put together. They have to be confirmed and to be supported on the national level. So this is why all the questions you have on, can I bring this ingredient or this side dish to the table? You need to ask the one that will be supporting them. That's your national funding agency. So that's sort of a criteria on what you can bring up. Then what you present on the level, your setting, whether it's an Italian dinner or if it's a Swedish meal, the composition, it will be evaluated then based on the excellence, the impact, and the quality, and weighted in the way where the impact is the most important thing, even though they're very balanced. But in that setting, just like you said, Paul, I think that the number of participants you have, that of course depends on how you will be evaluated on this international level. That is of course related to what you do. But you should, of course, and you will have to keep in mind that for some of the things you want to do, there might be a difficulty to have too many partners, because you might run into a problem on the national level. But this is something you have to find out in your process when you develop the project also. And that is why it is so important that you, in this process, you need to be in contact with all the partners and check, okay, we have this idea, we want to do this thing together. And you might find out this ingredient, I can't have this, the Swedish Energy Agency cannot fund it, or whatever it might be. Then you might look for another partner that could fulfill that part, or you might rearrange in the project. And so I think this comes back as the answer to all the questions in a sense. There is no optimum exactly, but you need to set this together. And the national versus the international level has a big importance here where you put the effort.
Yeah, thanks, Frederick. And this ties in also to the third question, I think, where the question was how to submit on a national level. You know, is that different from the international level? For the international level, you know, for the pre-proposal level, we're asking for the submission through the international submission system. Some countries may have some, you know, requirements also already in the pre-proposal phase, but that's very limited. But for instance, in Netherlands, we do ask a few inputs in the pre-proposal phase in addition to the international pre-proposal. Then in the full proposal phase, it is correct. You will need to have this international full proposal submitted through the electronic submission system. There are formats and templates for that and how that should look like. Next to that, in most of the countries you will have, or in many of the countries, you need to submit a national proposal. I cannot speak for all the countries, but speaking, let's say, for my experience in the Netherlands, in that case, we are asking basically for a national full proposal that will encompass the integral proposal, but nationally we need some additional information on some of the national, let's say, eligibility criteria. So that is what needs to be added. And also here you would submit the exact national funding request. So it would be the funding request related to the Dutch partners. And this might be similar in most of the countries. Again, I would refer to the Annex 1. And if that's not clear enough, please check your national contact point to clarify this. Kathy, do we have other questions in the meantime?
Yes, I have one question on the scope of projects. Are they to be strictly focused on heating and cooling, or heating cooling in relation to power generation? Is that a potential focus? And there's another interesting question that is on the if you're participating as a cooperating party, a partner on own funding, are there specific eligibility criteria other than those of this call, since there's no national funding agency? So there's some unclarity on that one.
Okay, yeah, maybe starting with the last one. No, if you're participating as the cooperation partner, that means basically that you have to bring your own funding. Then only the call criteria, the international call criteria are relevant, because you bring in your own money. Of course, it has to be of added value to the project, and the project has to fall within the scope of this call, this joint call. But there would not be any national checks, as your country is not part of it, and you're not requesting any subsidy. And in fact, even if you're from a country that is joining here and you don't need the subsidy, then the same is true for you. So we of course always applaud if people come in and bring their own money, then less public money has to be spent. The other question on the scope, the 3 points that were mentioned, these would be the 3 focus areas. So the project should address one of these 3. So just to remind you, it's either focusing on a source technology, you could say. So it could be geothermal, could be solar thermal, could be some other renewable or low carbon technology. It could be either the chain, so that's more the district heating cooling network, storage, but also on the end user side, heat pumps related. Or the third one would be the integration of heating and cooling in the total system. And I think the last one, there you have possibilities to have a project that is considering, this more integration aspect. So if you think of power to heat or optimum kind of control or integration of heating and cooling into the total energy system, could be addressed there. If it's but of course, I would say somehow the heating and cooling part needs to be the important part here. So if that's only on the side, then probably it might be not in the center of the focus here. But if you consider electricity and the integration with the electricity system and storage things or flexibility things that could be provided from the heating and cooling side, then I would think that would definitely fit. And again, it could be a project that is either addressing one of these 3 or 2 or even all 3 of them. And it could be more focused on one specific technology, but it could also be more integral. I don't know, have the other questions coming in? So looking at the time, I don't know how much there is still in the pipeline.
Sorry, I was muted. I was checking. there was just one. No, we're quite okay with going through the questions. Oh, here, there's a new one. Good afternoon. Can academics be co-els on multiple applications with different contribution roles, assuming that they all meet the criteria of the national funder and considering the funding limits? Our co-leads, I think, on multiple applications, co-investigators. Yes.
Yeah.
Can academics be co-investigators on multiple applications? That's the question.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I was looking at the chat, and I think some of the other questions you already managed to answer directly. So people, so have a look at the chat. But this specific one, I think yes, of course, an institution or even a company could be part of more than one project application, and as long as basically it fits in the national criteria as well as the overall international scope. These will be evaluated basically also separately. So in the pre-proposal phase, we will of course look, let's say, from all the countries whether it fits the national scope as well as the jointly the scope of the joint call. But if that is the case, and if you can provide, let's say, your own funding that is not coming nationally, and if it's a good proposal, then yeah, of course, you can be part of more than one proposal. Yeah, at some point you might be competing with yourself. That, of course, is the case, but that is up to you to make that choice. But in principle, I think this is not excluded. I don't know, Frederick, if you have any thoughts on this, but nationally in the Netherlands, for sure, it's not excluded.
No, I think exactly like you said, there might be, as with everything, there might be some detailed rules sometimes in the national funding agency. For instance, when it relates to the question of if you are in multiple applications, this might be in some countries or at some funding agencies, they might look on whether you are financially reliable if all applications would be approved, etc. But these are only the things that you will have to ask them. But in general, there is no problem with that.
Yeah, no, I would say so. And again, the importance, I would say, to stress, please check the Annex 1, the National Annex 1, and you know, probably best to contact your national contact point on these kind of specific questions. Not to run into any surprises, because of course, we and Frederick, we don't know for all the countries involved how the exact rules are, but in general, I think your remark.
Yeah, maybe one addition. I don't. Sorry, Paul, but I was thinking one thing that you also replied on. For those that have their own co-finance, this is of course, just like you said, we always see that as a good added value, but it needs to be both really confirmed that. So that there's a commitment, so that the evaluators know that this is something that is we can really count on. The other part is, which sometimes might be contradictory to applicants, is that the transnationality refers to that we want to see a transnationality not only in the collaboration as such, but we actually want the collaboration where the transnationality also is seen in the application of funds. This can always be discussed. I'm not sure exactly how it has been, if you've had cases in other calls in your experience, Paul, but I know we have had calls sometimes where we have a transnational collaboration, but there is only one partner that applies for funding from one country. And yeah, we still need to be fulfilled the transnationality criteria in terms of how you apply funding.
Correct. Yeah, we would just answer that we didn't have that before, but it's true. You need two partners, so you need to apply in two countries for funding. That's basically the thing, at least. But then, if you bring in more partners that don't need money, that's of course great, and it can be more. But that's correct. I'm looking a bit at the time and we're running a bit late. So I'm wondering, is there any pressing or urgent question you could not answer yet, Kathy?
Well, there's still one question I think that we didn't get back to at all, and that's the question of Kai Hussen. He was asking about the TRL levels, but also the feedback that I get from him is he received feedback from Danish utilities. He's based in Denmark, that the funding specifications are not attractive for them. Are utilities not expected to be part of the project if the impact is weighed highest? That's
yeah, it's hard for me to answer this one because I think this is a very specific Danish kind of situation. I don't know the Danish funding scheme in detail and how attractive that is for utilities. In general, I would think, but this is more from the perspective of a call. It's very good to have companies on board because it should be closer to the market. It should be higher TRL. I would advise you to check with your national contact point in Denmark what the situation is, and if you have a more generic question, also to send it to the office, to the Geothermica office that is handling the joint call, and we will look into that more specifically. So again, there might be differences country to country. In general sense, impact is important, and that would probably, we would encourage if companies are part of this and if private money is also being put on the table and it's not only public funding. Okay.
Yes, I think we should leave it there. I see that the person had to leave as well, so that's a bit unfortunate.
Very good. And possibly people have already an appointment in their matchmaking session, so I think we should conclude here. However, if you have a question that hasn't been answered yet, please send it to either Geothermica office that is handling this joint call, or if it's more national specific, ask it to your national contact point, and you could actually even do both, have the office in CC, so we can keep track of your questions and maybe come up with some frequently asked questions on the website. Having said that, we can go, I think, to a conclusion of this general plenary part. And let me maybe next slide, Alicia or Hjalti, I don't know if you have. Yeah, this is just about the matchmaking platform. You heard about this, so you can find your way there also after today. And next one. Yeah, and then we come to the end, and I would just like to give the floor shortly to Frederick and Harpa, if they are still around, for a few final words. Frederick?
No, I should not take more of your time. Thanks, Paul, and thanks, Kari, thanks, Hjalti, everyone for the introduction. Thanks, everyone, for the good questions. Keep asking us questions also after this webinar. We will be at your hand, although some of us might be on vacation for some time, but there's always someone you should be in contact with. I wish you all a good rest of the day. And I hand over to you, Harpa.
So I just want to say thank you for a fantastic discussion. I am sure that these questions, they came in handy for a lot more people than the ones that asked them. So it's very good that you post the questions. As Frederick said, keep asking questions, and my advice is just don't wait until it's too late. So good continuation on your work, and have a great day.
Yeah, thanks very much, Frederick and Harpa. Very good point. Don't wait too long. If you have any question, post it as soon as possible. 4th of October is really soon and short after the holiday season. So important that you have a good consortium and a good proposal already in the pre-proposal phase. Otherwise, it will be very hard to correct. So I would really advise you, even before the holidays, to get in touch with your potential partners. And if you have any questions, to contact either the office or your national contact points to check that this is feasible and eligible. Having said that, I would like to thank you also on behalf of the organizing team. Great to have you with us. Good luck with all your ideas and all your proposals. And yeah, you know the channels where you can ask the questions. And with that, I would like to wish you a great summer. And if you want to join in the matchmaking event, you can do so right after this. So with that, I'd like to close this plenary session. All the best.